This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This table is really tilted.
Excuse me? Am I gonna get a chance to speak?
Maybe I should take that back.
Denied. Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Take a giant step for mankind.
Welcome to the Tilted Table with your hosts, Sean and Joe.
Welcome to the trailer park.
Well, I guess that's what it is. Folks, welcome to another episode of The Tilted Table, the internet's answer to a question that no one asked. I am Sean Landon Clark.
And I am Joey Joe, the Fracky Mac.
Yes, and today we're going to do an episode where we talk about our personal rankings of the most overrated bands.
I'm excited.
And the most underrated bands or musical artists. It doesn't have to be band. It could be anybody.
I have a couple that I'm as soon as these words like exit my mouth, I think you're going to clutch at your heart.
Yeah, I'm sure I will because you're going to surprise me. But I'd like to lay down some ground rules for this, just for the listener. When we say overrated bands, I don't want people to think that we say that we think they suck.
No.
Right? No. So first of all these bands are massively successful. So you always get the general, comment back when you say like, "Oh, this band sucks," right? I think they're overrated or whatever. Well, they made more money than you. I don't know who you are.
Right.
Right. So they're successful. We recognize that these are successful bands. So this is just personal opinion. I used to be a musician, a professional musician. So I have a little more deeper investment in this than I think Joe probably does.
I have a huge, back when Tower Records was a thing, I still have hundreds and hundreds of albums. So the people that I might say that I will say are overrated, I own their whole discography.
Yeah.
So
see, and this is interesting because I'm doing the same thing. I have a band on this list is the cornerstone of the reason why I even started playing. Like
and they're in your overrated.
And I actually put them in my overrated list, despite the fact that they are probably my all-time. Well, they're one of their albums is either number one in my mind or number two. I compete with another band that has a specific album.
Okay.
So even the ones I'm saying are overrated are some of the biggest influences on me. And to this day, I still like them.
Yes.
But, 20, 30 years down the line, looking back at what they did, I think they may be considered an overrated band.
I agree. And that's exactly as I was like scribbling notes and coming up with my own list. That's what I came up with is, a number of these people have sold millions and millions of albums. And I still enjoy them, but if you were to say, would you list them under greatest bands or artists of all time? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even include them in the top 50.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So we should start with the overrated.
Overrated. I see. I'm going to come right out of the barn, both guns blazing. I'm quick drawing Desert Eagles with my first one.
Okay, go for it.
Most overrated band. I own the albums. I don't understand why people like them so much. I will never go see them in person.
I feel like I know what you're going to say, but go ahead.
U2.
Oh, U2. Son of a bitch.
Yes.
Not on my list, but I agree.
I just can't. Their first couple albums, they're, again, solid material. But, when you think of like great, selling out the Sphere, charging, $700 per ticket, like it's okay. It's not that.
Right. Yeah, this is interesting because I am not a big U2 fan. I think they're extremely overrated. And I have this friend, Matt, who was such a huge U2 fan. He would fight me nonstop if I ever said, I just don't think they're that good. And you could give me any of their albums. I think they're all fairly mediocre. Why they're so big and so revered and why they were so popular, I don't know. And his default answer to me was always, look how many albums they sell. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the cornerstone to judge a band on. They're popular. That doesn't mean they're good.
Oh, I think what they had going for them is they were at the cutting edge of the MTV generation. So as TV videos became popular, like they were on like a burgeoning group at that time.
Sure.
So they gained exposure to the youth before anyone else did, and again, was latched into their memory as like, this is a cornerstone piece of my childhood. I think that's what it is. The music's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know like The Edge. It's just like, oh my gosh, dude, right? What's your real name, Brian or something? Like The Edge, and then the Bono and the sunglasses and Nobel Peace Prizes, and like overrated.
Yeah,
music's okay.
Well, I think,
overrated.
I think one of the things that we're going to be establishing in this conversation is definitely how much this is about time and place, right band at the right time. And so there are probably hundreds and hundreds of bands that were just coming up with U2, but U2 was the right band, the right place, the right time, the right look,
country.
From the right country, and then they catch fire and they go. And I think that's a lot of this. One of my bands in particular, I think, is extremely time and place, that if they would have came out 10 years later, they wouldn't have done well. If they would have came out 10 years earlier, they wouldn't have done well. So I think that's going to be a big part of this. And you're right. I think U2 definitely got a big push by MTV. MTV loved them. And if radio wasn't playing you, MTV sometimes would. And if you became popular on MTV, you would definitely garner more radio play. And in the early 80s, not a lot of bands had videos. I mean, they did, but nobody was making videos specifically for airing because there was no place to really air them.
Right. And it's also a captive audience, because with that era of MTV, you had 30 television stations.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in pop culture or whatever, you're going to camp out on that one channel, and you're going to watch it endlessly. So to your point, if they would have come out 10 years later, I don't think they would be anywhere close to the band that people think they are.
Yeah, I think they would have done well. I think they could have been signed and probably had hit songs, but they wouldn't be revered as this legendary band that's crossing multiple decades. But I'm going to ask you this, and we should ask this about every band that we discuss.
Okay.
Is there at least one song from them that you think is absolutely just a phenomenal song?
No.
The quick no. I barely finished my sentence. You threw that out.
No. There's a couple that the albums I'd say are well-rounded, and I mean that actually as a compliment, because a lot of albums are, you had the one or two hit singles, and then just the rest of the tracks are fillers. I would say their albums as a whole were super solid.
Okay. Yeah, I think, Joshua Tree I thought was, a solid album. But again, first of all, not my style of music, but I think I'm good enough to kind of pick apart whether a band is exceptional. And they're really popular. Never thought they were exceptional. For me, if there's any song from them that I think is really, really good, maybe New Year's Day, I think is a pretty cool song. But even then, I'm not going to say that, that's a phenomenal song. I just think it's their best song. And I'm going to say it's better than average.
Yeah. Okay. See? We're right out of the gates. We're already on the same page. Okay. So I'm going to hear, I know you're going to drop a hammer with your first overrated.
Well, I don't think I'm going to drop a hammer with my first overrated. There is a hammer on here that, like I said, it's a band that's is super influential to me. But I'm going to start with a band that I never understood how they have lasted so long and how they have sold so many records is Kiss. I think they're a terrible band. Never good in any era.
I agree. I mean, I think, again, that goes to people's nostalgia and showing up for their very first giant fireworks, flamethrowers, guitars that shot out Roman candles. It was a spectacular that nobody had ever seen.
Sure.
And most people saw it when they're in high school, and now that those people they have kids, you've got to experience what I experienced when I was your age. So I think Kiss is a giant nostalgia act.
Yeah, well,
only one step away from performing in an Indian casino.
This is true, and I know from my perspective, they've been more about their shows and their performance, which I'll give it up for that.
They're not studio artists.
Yeah, they're great showmen. The makeup, the pyrotechnics, they did a lot of this stuff before other bands even thought about doing stuff like that.
Were you ever Paul Stanley at Halloween?
No, but I knew people that would dress with the Kiss makeup for Halloween. I just never got it. So the way I kind of filter them out a little bit is if you listen to their first 5 or 6 records, most of the songs are mediocre at best. The recording is terrible. The drums in particular sound awful. So I don't understand, even in the 70s, when they were starting to gain ground, why anybody liked their music. Because not only was it mediocre music with these sort of sophomoric lyrics that were stupid, they were really poor recording. It didn't even sound good.
I think it was the very first, quote, shock rock band. I mean, you certainly had Black Sabbath, and Alice Cooper came out about around that time.
Yeah.
But it was more of like in your face with like all of the, you know, the flamethrowers and all that kind of stuff. And their label certainly promoted the heck out of them.
Yeah.
Versus, you know, the later iterations like Guar,
Oh yeah.
Manson, you know,
Yeah.
those guys. But okay, and for the record, I own 0 Kiss albums.
Okay. Me too. I don't have any Kiss.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is when they transitioned to the 80s and they took the makeup off and they became more of a kind of a generic, you know, LA style band, they still sold, you know, quite a few records. I mean, Lick It Up, which was I think their comeback record, was the first one without makeup. That sold millions of copies. And they're bouncing off that song "Lick It Up," which, if you've never heard it, it's called "Lick It Up." So figure out how sophomoric it is. I mean, it's just this generic song with these stupid lyrics, but it was a hit. So again, they've sold millions. And there's that whole Kiss army. There are people out there. If you say bad things about Kiss, just the shit that I just said right now,
They'll unfriend you.
They'll unfriend you quickly. Yeah, it's okay. They'll chop your head off.
Yeah. You never bought like those platform boots?
Nope, not interested.
Not interested.
And I think the other thing about Kiss that bothers me is, as far as musicianship goes, they were terrible. I mean, Gene Simmons is not a good singer. He can't really play bass. Ace Frehley is not a good guitar player. He never was. And he had potential, but he was a massive drug user and alcoholic. I've seen him in recent interviews where people are trying to interview him about, this riff or that riff, these classic Kiss songs. And he openly admits things like, I don't know, I was just noodling around. I don't even know what I was doing. Like, he doesn't know anything. And so I'm just like, God, not only are you a lousy guitar player, you can't even explain some basics about your songs that you wrote, or at least help write. But I will give it up for this. They're great marketers. They're great businessmen.
For sure.
And Paul Stanley is a really great singer. He's got a great voice.
Agreed.
Outside of that, garbage.
Yep. Not my jam.
Yeah. So, again, successful. I shouldn't want to crap on success because you know how many records I sold?
4.
Maybe 4.
And 2 are to your mom. Well, the next one on my underrated list, I don't want to say it like breaks my heart.
Is this underrated or overrated?
This is still I'm sorry, overrated.
We're going
Overrated. Yeah. Sort of breaks my heart. I'm not sad about it. One of their albums is in I'd say my top 30 of all time albums.
Yeah, here it comes.
But I'm still gonna smack the group with an overrated label.
Yeah.
Megadeth.
Oh God, dare you?
The Euthanasia album is one of my all-time favorites. "To Le Monde" has been the ringtone on my phone for years. It's an epic song. It was a great music video. And I think they just got dragged along in the shadow of Metallica, and we're trying, and this is my own personal opinion, trying to play catch up, as Metallica to release like Ride the Lightning. Then we got to do something that's kind of like that. So it was almost I don't want to say copycat albums, but maybe just like a tag along type album.
Okay.
That really didn't have the success of Metallica, and even like Cryptic Writings. There's one track that was off of that album that I love it, and the rest of the album's garbage. So I am a fan. I like Megadeth. If Megadeth was here, I'd certainly go see him and I have a great time. But in the game that we're playing of overrated, I'm still going to give them an overrated label.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna soundly disagree with this one.
Okay, you're entitled.
I think where people, and I understand what you're saying, like sort of the shadow of Metallica. I think that's largely due to the fact that Dave Mustaine was the original lead guitar player for Metallica.
Right.
So they fire him and he starts his own band. And I can see that that comparison is always going to be made. I think where people fall short is that Dave Mustaine created this problem himself because he would never shut the fuck up about, being in Metallica. Like, of course, people can always think that you're in the shadow of something if you never stop talking about,
it's always your reference point.
Yeah. So that's the first problem. And I think that gave him kind of a bad rap. The difference between Megadeth and Metallica for me is that Megadeth was speed metal. So I think they broke ground. They did play stuff that was vastly different than Metallica, I think. There's one exception. The Kill 'Em All record is probably the closest when you see like a
Speed metal.
Speed metal. By the time they get to Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets, they had sort of morphed over into more of a thrash metal sound, where Megadeth was speed metal from the start all the way through Rust in Peace. By the time they get to your album, Euthanasia, well, actually I think it was the one before that, where they toned down their sound a little bit. They weren't really speed metal anymore. They weren't writing 7-minute long epic songs. There's obviously more radio friendly, going with the more Metallica Black album style.
Is that Peace Cells?
No, Peace Cells is their second record.
Got it.
So if people look at Metallica and there's that camp that believes that everything stops at And Justice for All, and after there's the Black Album and beyond is nothing but sellout. Megadeth's at the same time, and it wasn't Euthanasia. I feel dumb because I can't remember the name of it, but it's the one that had it's something you need those damn songs on it. Well, that's how good that album was. It was a big hit album, but yeah, there's a
Is that Rest in Peace?
No, Rest in Peace was the last one that people will say is old school.
Got it.
Megadeth.
Okay.
There's the one after that. It has an old man on the cover. Euthanasia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. I feel stupid. But I think that they're not overrated. I think what hurts Megadeth throughout their entire career is, one, Dave Mustaine is not a
Symphony of Destruction.
That was one of the.
I'm sorry, Countdown to Extinction.
Countdown to Extinction.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and that had Symphony of Destruction on it, and it had that one song, da-dun-dun, hello, me, meet the real me. I can't remember the name of that song. Sweating Bullets, that's the name of that song. So, yeah, that's the Black Album for Megadeth. But I think Dave Mustaine's vocals hurt him, because he's not a particularly good singer. So I can see a lot of people, if they listen to Metallica and think, oh, they're overrated, I think that most people might lean on the fact that James Hetfield is a way better singer than Dave Mustaine. And Dave Mustaine has that scratchy, high-pitched kind of voice, and I think a lot lot might.
He's got like a good snarl, though.
Yeah. So
it's like if Elvis was pissed off and doing metal, I think that he'd be Dave Mustaine.
Yeah. I think the other thing that might hurt them in terms of being overrated is that for those years, when they started through Rust in Peace, every album had different, guitar player and drummers on it. Like freaking Dave Mustaine fired everybody every album, and I think that hurts you a little bit in legitimacy. It's like, really, this is the Dave Mustaine and the bass player Dave Ellefson at the time is the only two consistent members.
Sure.
And I think the last thing that hurts Megadeth in terms of long-term legacy is they have put out a lot of albums, and none of them are really all that good after that. It's just like, now you're just giving us slop after slop after slop. I don't know too many people who really think Megadeth past 1995, 96, 97, that these are really good albums. Where I think,
Agreed.
I think Metallica was able to pull it off. I think they've gotten a lot more love for later albums, even though they get crapped on by Metallica fans that feel that they're still just sellouts. But I think the majority of what Metallica's put out has been way better quality than what Megadeth has put out.
For sure. Yeah, I cut just for the record, I cut Metallica off at the Reload, or after the Reload album.
Oh, you're missing out.
I like like Saint Anger was trash.
It was a terrible album.
Yeah, that I wanted my money back.
I want my money back.
I even had the plastic off. I listened to it once and went back into the warehouse. I'm like, I need my money back.
I got a funny story about Saint Anger when I was living in the Bay Area, when Saint Anger was going to be released, and it was, according to Metallica, this was we're coming back, because Load and Reload had turned off a lot of people.
It was supposed to be like their opus.
Yeah, and so there was this radio station in the Bay Area, as a rock station, and it was going to be this big premiere. I was on a Friday night, and they were going to play whatever. I don't know if it was the entire album or something like that. It was this big to do. It could have been just the single, but I got a feeling they were going to play the entire album, and that happened. And after that, I never heard any song from that that album on the radio.
Terrible. And the cover art was dumb.
Yeah. And the snare sound was terrible.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's definitely some, I think, later Metallica albums I think are pretty good.
All right. So who's up next on deck for your overrated?
Okay, so I'll drop the bomb right now.
I'm ready.
Okay, so I'm gonna say Guns N' Roses. one of my all-time favorite bands, probably the main reason I got into playing guitar. I love Guns N' Roses. Appetite for Destruction is the greatest album ever made.
That's a piece of Americana.
Yeah.
That's transcends just an album.
Yeah, and again, it's either my favorite album or it competes with another album. I constantly go back and forth. This is my favorite album of all time. But when you look at the entirety of their career, they don't have a lot, but yet they're still considered to this day. I mean, they're selling out freaking arenas, and they don't even have all the original members. They're still missing 2 guys. When you look at their career, Appetite for Destruction, monumental. And then you have the Illusion albums, which at the time they came out, people really praised them. But in hindsight, it's really probably, they would have been better off, honestly, if they would have taken all the best stuff off of both those albums and just made one. Because there's a lot of filler on those albums.
Yes, there is.
And the other thing that I think hurts them, maybe in my eyes, at least it hurts them in my eyes, is a lot of the songs that were on the Illusions were songs they had written prior to Appetite for Destruction. So a lot of the songs on their Illusions that are really good songs weren't even new songs. So now if you take those songs out and like, what is the new material that you produce for the Illusions? A lot of it is garbage. And then they did the Spaghetti Incident, which was just a bunch of covers. And then we waited 13 years for the Axl Rose Chinese Democracy Project, which I'm going to say this, and a lot of people like Chinese Democracy. I'm just going to say this. There's one good song on it. It's a song called Better, and it's the only good song. And I'm going to say this about it. I think it may be one of Guns N' Roses' best songs of all time.
Really?
I'll put that on the list. That it's up there. It's up there. It's
I'm gonna have to
absolutely phenomenal song.
I'm gonna flag it and I'm gonna go back and listen to it because that's got to have been a minute and I don't remember it. So maybe I'm not getting a fair shake.
Yeah.
But
So
you said so Better.
Yeah. And so if you go to today, now they've released a couple of new songs. I'll name 2 of them. One is called Shadow of Your Love.
Okay.
And the other one is called Hard School. So now they're releasing new songs. These are 2 songs that they wrote long before Appetite for Destruction. So they're still pulling out shit that's 35 years old. I'm like, I mean, how much, it's the definition of being overrated. Like, you guys still, it's been 30 years and you guys still can't produce really anything that's that good that isn't pre Appetite for Destruction. You're still living off these songs that you wrote, fucking 3 decades ago. And they did release 2 other songs. I can't remember the names of them, that are brand new songs, and they're terrible.
Does Axl Rose still have cornrows?
No, he's got kind of a short shoulder length.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he lose some weight?
No, he's still fat.
Man, I saw that guy, wearing like a football jersey and cornrows, and
Yeah, that's the early 2000s
weighed
era.
like 300 pounds. I'm like, geez, Louise, man.
That's the early 2000 era when they tried to do their comeback on the MTV Video Music Awards.
That's what it was.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Terrible. Yep. You're fired.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Leave a like on the video. I know you're enjoying this. Can you shut up?
The internet's answer to a question that was never asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
All right, so I don't know that I'm going to commit heresy here, but I guess for the framework of the conversation is, I'm a huge music fan. I can't sing. I don't play any musical instruments. I do have a mixing board I have fun with. I don't remember the lyrics to any songs, but I'm a huge music person, and to the point, I have a 10 terabyte RAID drive to just store solely my music. So just for context purposes, I'm an avid listener. And I listen to everything, including opera, except for country. I won't touch country with a 10-foot pole.
Okay.
So just for framework of what we're working with, completely overrated as an artist. The rhymes are okay. Jay-Z.
Okay.
Not a fan. Not a fan.
You don't like Hova? Isn't that what they call it?
No,
Hova?
I don't like the Hold Up the Rock. I don't like any of that stuff. There is a couple onesie twosies from his Black album or the Blueprint that I'm like, it's okay. It's got like some cachet, and I can see how it would do well on the radio and whatnot. But when you think of, in my mind, I think of pantheon of great rappers or hip hop artists. Like I don't even think I would include him in my top 50.
Sure.
So in terms of I think again that's MTV version 2.0 when Carson Daly was on and pumping people's.
It's when hip hop became the sort of the popular form of music. So MTV moved away from rock and roll.
It was out of rock and roll. It was kind of like on the tail end of like boy band era, NSYNC and all that kind of stuff. And it was the new at the time. Yeah. And it just location, right? New York City, MTV. He's there, they're there, hyping somebody up. And I'm not saying he's not talented. He's certainly talented. I'm just saying, in my personal book, for the purposes of this game, overrated.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say this about Jay-Z. I know a lot of people that are big hip hop heads that think he is overrated. Blueprint seems to be the one that they lean on as being like, that's really the only great thing he's done, and everything else is pretty marginal. I'm not a big Jay-Z fan. I never was. I always thought the same thing. Why is this guy so revered? Like, why do people like this guy? I think he's just, some godsend of hip hop.
It's the U2 effect.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a time and place. I think Jay-Z has a certain kind of swag to him that sells records. I would actually compare him, and this is probably a bad comparison because I think this rapper is even more overrated. It's Snoop Dogg. That Snoop Dogg was never really that good of a rapper, but yet he's got this sort of iconic kind of thing going on, and I think it largely has to do with him, not about his specific music. I think Jay-Z has got something similar, although his music is way better and he's a way better rapper. And I think in the collection or his catalog, I think Jay-Z's got much better material than Snoop Dogg.
What?
Yes.
No, I will arm wrestle you over this one.
now we're going to get into a fight.
Yeah. I think the world of Snoop. And I do, even when he went or left Death Row, and then he went to Master P's No Limit Records.
Yeah, No Limit.
Yeah, there's one album that off of No Limit that is, I would say it's in my top 10 all-time greatest songs. So no, I will friendly disagree with you on that one. But it's funny, with everything going on in the world and news today and whatnot, and Jay-Z all up in that mix. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, so let me go with another one here. There's a couple on this list. We may have to split this into 2 episodes because we're not even through the overrated yet. So yeah, we can split this and we'll do the underrated next episode. So I'm gonna throw out a band that is, I think, iconic, but I think their music's terrible. Is the Grateful Dead?
Oh, for sure.
I mean,
I would say I can't. Okay, so growing up, my parents had these friends, Doug and Marie, and they were like the ultimate Deadheads. They drove around in the Volkswagen Vanagon bus. They had those little dancing bears like all over the car. It was all about like where Jerry Garcia was going to be performing. And I remember even at that time, I was a huge music person, and like 3 songs in, I'm like, I don't understand what this is. I guess if you're just dropping loads of acid and eating mushroom sandwiches, anything would sound good.
That could be the reason why. I mean, I think they are largely a time and place. They're coming out of the 60s. They were one of the bigger bands in San Francisco. So when you talk about like Jefferson Airplane and that whole explosion in the 60s of these bands, they were just one of the bands. So I think they are very much a time and place kind of thing. But they did draw this sort of iconic following. And yeah, people will follow them around on tour, and that'd be like a lifestyle.
It was a lifestyle.
Yeah. And when I first heard their music, my first thought was like, this sounds like a shitty blues band. And I mean, like, really shitty blues band.
I will give it up for their merch and whoever is doing their marketing, like the skull and the little picture inside
for
of the
sure.
skull.
I mean,
throw that on a skateboard. And
even when I was in high school, I had Grateful Dead tie-dye shirts, and I couldn't stand the band. I thought they sucked, but their merch was awesome.
Yeah. Shoot, even was it not the Barcelona Olympics, but the one after that with the Lithuanian basketball team, and they had like the tie-dyed Grateful Dead T-shirts that they wore on the podium.
I don't remember this.
I mean, the Grateful Dead is echoed through time for sure, but from a music quality, I'm not feeling any of that.
Yeah, and I know that, like, what I understand is that I think a lot of people who like the Grateful Dead will tell you that the biggest mistake you can make is just listening to their albums. because they weren't a band that is a recording band; they're a live band, and they were a jam band, so they would play for hours,
meandering, never-ending songs.
So it's like trying to capture what's truly great about them can't be caught on a record. But I never heard them live, and typically speaking, your first exposure to any band is you see the record, you get the record, and you dig them, then you go to the concert. I mean, obviously you do go to shows, you might see a band that you've never heard of, and the reverse can happen, but that didn't happen with me with the Dead. So the first time I heard the Dead was on record, and that was enough to say, like, I would never go to one of their shows. I wouldn't want to stand around for 4 or 5 hours listening to these guys play shitty blues, because that's what it sounded like to me.
Right.
Yeah, just never got them.
But I guess the country is better that they were here. Culturally relevant. We'll say overrated, but yet culturally relevant.
See, I agree with you 100%, and I would say the same thing about Snoop Dogg. I think he's culturally relevant. I don't think he's that good.
Oh my goodness!
Crap on him.
I was gonna say this debate's gonna go on for years.
All right, so we got some time left. You want to shoot out another one, another overrated band?
I do have one, yes. And so I think this is again going to. Before I tell you the name of the group, again, I own all of the albums. There's a number of great iconic songs. When I was 16 years old, my very first car was a 1969 Chevy Nova. I think we talked about one of them. I did what every responsible college student does, and I spent my student loan money on a new system for my car.
Okay, of course.
And that was right when they didn't have CD players in the dash, so you would have a tape deck, and then you'd have the tape deck adapter with your Sony Discman.
Yes.
And this is before electronic skip protection. So I had this beach towel that I would have on the passenger seat, and I would bundle up my Discman just so I could listen into Aerosmith.
Oh my God. You're going to tell me that Aerosmith's overrated.
I think, again, culturally relevant. I think, again, this is, right when they came out in late 70s. It was so unique. It was very different. I'm not saying they didn't have great albums. Again, I still listen to them. I enjoy them. I'm just saying, and if you were to say in the pantheon of like rock stars, and I have the same name as the guitarist.
That's right.
So it's very easy to remember. He has much better hair than I do. By the way.
Does.
Yeah, that guy. I hope I look like that when I'm older.
Yeah, he keeps himself in good shape.
Yeah. But and again, for what we're doing here, I would still say overrated.
Okay. My feeling about Aerosmith is vastly different. I think they're a great band. I will say that when they came out with things like Crying, the later stuff. That's when I think it got so watered down for them that it just becomes, I don't like any of that stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the early albums, again, I love them.
Yeah.
Any of the later stuff after 9 Lives, not feeling any of it.
Yeah. I think I stopped at about Get a Grip. I think it's when I kind of fell off with Aerosmith. I still think that they're really good musicians. I think Steven Tyler is an absolutely amazing songwriter. I think Joe Perry is an absolutely amazing guitar player, even though he's not particularly skilled guitar player. I mean, I just crapped on Ace Frehley 20 minutes ago, and somebody might say, like, well, how's he really that much different than Ace Frehley? I said, well, I think the difference would be that he knows how to write a song, a good song, and I think he knows what he's playing.
There we go.
Right? So he could explain to Ace what Ace is playing because they're playing kind of similar kind of styles. Tom Hamilton's a great bass player, great songwriter. Joey Kramer's a great drummer. Brad Whitford, one of the most underrated rhythm guitar players, and even when they broke up in the late 70s, Whitford went out and he teamed with somebody else, and I can't remember the guy's name, and they put out an album. It was a phenomenal rock album. So I think they're all very talented, and I think they wrote really, really good songs, and I think Steven Tyler's a great front man. I think they deserve to be on the list of great bands. I don't think they're overrated, but again, I do think that part of their career got so watered down that now it's getting kind of corny to me, and these guys should just quit.
I think that's one of the things is you have to realize, like, when your sun is setting, and to just, it's okay to relive the glory days, but do it by yourself. Like once you end up at and I do like going to the fair, but once you end up on the fair circuit, I think it's over and you probably should have saved your money because you're there just to get a paycheck.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is there's a famous quote from a football player named Howie Long, right? Famous Raider linebacker. And when he retired, I think at 32 or 33, and he was still playing at a very high level. And he made a comment saying that it's better to retire a year too early than a year too late.
Yep.
And I think a lot of these bands probably could do that. Like
chop some time off.
Yeah, it's like it's probably best to leave. You don't want to stay too long at the party ultimately because it's probably not going to end well for you.
You don't want to be the old dude in the corner hitting on the young girl. Yeah, it just gets weird.
All right, that's awesome. Aerosmith, that's a little bit of a curveball. All right, so I'm going to throw one more out there. I got two on this list, and I don't know. One is, I think they're both controversial, and I'm trying to do this on the fly. I'm going to throw out this one because I think this is a more interesting conversation.
I'm excited to see what you're going to say, dude.
I'm going to say overrated, and I'm going to say out the gate, I love this guy, but I still think, not in hindsight, even in the moment, I thought he was overrated. It's Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Really?
Yep.
I did not see that coming.
I'm going to say Stevie Ray Vaughan is overrated.
See, if you were to say like top 5 blues guitarists of all time, like he's easily in that mix in my book.
Okay. See, and this is why he's so popular, because he is considered one of the greatest blues players ever, right? But I still think that this is largely time and place, because I listened to a lot of blues, and I was heavily influenced by blues guitarists and those types of people. And I've listened to dozens and dozens of contemporaries of Stevie Ray, people that came out after Stevie Ray died. And I can tell you right now, I can off the top of my head name 5 guitar players that are basically in the same genre as Stevie Ray that play just as good, if not better. And they just.
But do they have as cool of a hat?
No, they don't. But I think the other thing is.
What about the clothes? Because he
did.
He embodied the blues guitarist.
I said, and here's my argument for anybody right now that's punching their computer, because I would say Stevie Ray Vaughan's overrated. It's time and place. So in the 80s, it became the guitar god era. Eddie Van Halen blew it up, and then everybody was looking for like the Randy Rhodeses of the world, and you had Joe Satriani and Steve Vai, these just guitar gods, right? So I think when that became popular, and everyone's looking for these great guitar players, well, they have to find one in maybe the blues arena, and I think Stevie Ray got kind of picked, and it could have been a lot of different people. Stevie Ray, I think, was the right place, the right time, a guitarist that they wanted to put out there that was straight up traditional kind of blues. He definitely had, a great songs. I'm not taking anything away from him. I love Stevie Ray Vaughan. But, I think he was kind of anointed by MTV and by the powers that be in the record industry to be that guy. And there could have been a dozen other guys that could have been treated the same way and possibly could have been just as big as Stevie Ray and getting the same treatment as Stevie Ray.
Didn't he, Stevie Ray is the one that could play the guitar better than the devil in that whole story?
No. You mean you're talking about, what do you mean, Crossroads?
Yeah.
No, that was Steve Vai.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
That was Steve. What are you talking about? The guy who played the devil's guitar player?
Yes.
Yeah, that was Steve Vai that played the devil's guitar player in that movie. So I think Stevie Ray had some really great songs. He definitely wrote a lot more commercial blues music. Because guys, I'll give you a good example of somebody I think is just as good as Stevie Ray Vaughan. Is a guy named Coco Montoya. And he's an absolutely phenomenal guitar player. And he was around during the same time as Stevie Ray. I think he still plays today. And I think his lead work is just as good as Stevie Ray Vaughan. I even think it's a little bit better. But does he write as good of songs as Stevie Ray did? I don't think so. And also, these guys don't write particularly commercial kind of music. And then you had Stevie Ray was definitely positioned when he came out with In Step, which I think is kind of his biggest album. House is a Rockin', Crossfire, really commercially accessible music. So I think that's why he gets that love.
Man, I mean, yeah, I'm still blown away though, because I go so far as to say iconic American guitarist.
Oh no, I'm not. Again, I'm not saying he is an iconic guitar player. He's a phenomenal guitar player. I just think he's overrated because I hear people say like, well, he's like the greatest blues guitar player ever. I'm like, have you really listened to a lot of blues? And I'm talking about stuff specifically like Stevie Ray, kind of that upbeat rock and roll. Blues. I ain't talking about Muddy Waters or something. I'm not talking about that.
I like Muddy Waters.
Yeah. So I think that's why I think he's overrated, because I think I think of the way he was promoted and as famous as he got, people are saying like, oh, he's the greatest blues player. And I think people that say that don't really listen to the blues. They listen to Stevie Ray, and that's what they know. And again,
that's fair.
And you could, I could put Stevie Ray again. He's definitely one of the best to ever do it. But this sort of idea that he's some sort of iconic blues player, I'm like, you really need to listen to the blues. And there's a ton of other dudes that are just as good, probably even better. But he was the guy I think anointed, and I think he gets that iconic status. And plus, he died in a plane wreck.
Yep,
that helps.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Who's the guitarist? I'm pulling a blank, and we won't deviate here. But the group Polyphia.
I've never even heard of the band.
Oh, this is I'd say they're new and current.
Okay,
but I would put the guitarist in that same. I'm pulling a blank on what his name is. I don't even think I know his name.
Okay,
young dude, covered in tats.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll drop that in my group chat.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
check it out. Yeah, that's going to be something new. I exposed you to a new artist that you didn't know about.
Yeah.
That never happens.
Yeah. Awesome. That's an interesting topic. I mean, I've got other bands on here. I could go on, but we're already crossing like 45 minutes.
Oh, no, this is perfect though, because that gives us for tomorrow. We easily have material for episode 2.
Yeah, well, this is a 2-parter. Mm-hmm. So tomorrow we're going to take a look at the bands that we think are underrated.
Yes.
I have an important announcement for you, so stay tuned.
Yo, that's some next level shit, bruh.
So you got me. Big deal.
The internet's answer to a question no one asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
Folks, thank you for listening to another episode of The Tilted Table, the internet's answer to a question that no one asked. I am Sean Landon Clark.
And I am your co-pilot, Joey Joe, the Fracky Mac.
And we're going to pop in some records, because tomorrow we're going to be talking about some underrated bands.
Yeah, actually I'm going to pop in one of my 8 tracks. I got a player at home.
Sweet.
I'm going to let it rip.
Peace.